Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Walker. I am the president and co-founder of the Sports Innovation Lab. I am here today to present to you some research we did last year on the future of watching sports. As many of you know, the sports industry makes money from a number of traditional ways. It sells merchandise, sponsorship, media rights, and the future of watching sports has a tremendous impact on how the industry will make money going forward. So this research is really designed to get you to think differently about linear broadcasts, about the fan experience, about how they lean in to watching sports and consuming media in general. And I'm very proud to present it to you today. So without further ado, I'm going to pop open the report and the presentation and walk you through what we call at the Sports Innovation Lab the fluid fan. If we're going to understand the future of watching sports, we need to understand who the future fan is. And at the Sports Innovation Lab, we talk about the fluid fan being different than the diehard fan. And if you've heard me present or Angela Ruggiero, my co-founder and CEO, present, we always make sure we ground every presentation in the idea that there is a new type of fan emerging. And this new fan is different than the diehard fan because they're open to change. They seek new experiences that sports can offer them in their social life, in their entertainment, and all kinds of different ways of getting closer to the athletes they love and admire. They're empowered to choose. That means that as fans, they have more choices than ever at their fingertips, whether it's media, whether it's devices. They can choose how they want to interact with a sports property in different ways now. And that's new. That's a different type of behavior a fan has. And finally, they're continuously evolving. And this is the thing that as an industry, we struggle with the most. The idea that these fans are using technology outside of sports. Think of like voice technology or virtual reality or a new gaming console. They're constantly seeing and experiencing new technology in other areas of their lives, and they expect sports to mirror that experience or at least offer them that same type of entertainment when they log in or when they turn on their device and they really want to engage in a new way. So think of the fluid fan as the context for how we consider where the media industry needs to go to create a new experience for the future of watching sports. Most importantly, I want you to change your mindset. I want you to change your mindset from thinking about watching sports as a way to escape your daily life and have a mindless experience to sit around with a bunch of friends and really just sit back and enjoy a sports entertainment event. That is one way we consume sports. But what we've seen over the last few years is because of the digital format of sports media, there's a lot of new ways that we're like not sitting back, not being passive, but leaning into the experience of watching sports. And that's because digital enhancements, next gen data stories are now making it easier for us to look up stats, compare athletes with previous athletes in the sport. Is this footballer as fast as this footballer? Is that goal as exciting or challenging or difficult as this previous goal? Let's go online. Let's look up the highlights. Let's look up the data. Let's look up the stats and figure out what's happening. It's because we have new camera angles now. We have drones. We have sky cams. We have 360 views of the field. That also allows us as fans to lean in more and not just sit back and passively watch. And then, of course, we have devices. We have the ability to flip between games very easily, do windows inside of windows, watch multiple games at the same time, watch only highlights. There's all kinds of ways now that we can use our digital platforms to stream multiple games at the same time that we might be watching a linear broadcast. So we as an industry are moving very quickly beyond just the passive experience of watching sports, which has dominated our business model for decades. And at the Sports Innovation Lab, we don't just think about how we're changing from the fact that we're less passive viewers. We also see macro trends that are converging around the experience of watching a live event. We're now going to events that are like stadiums full of screens. So even buying a ticket and going to the event is very much a watching experience. You have jumbotrons and surround digital displays, and even the field with augmented reality can display stats or new types of advertising or experiences or games or betting lines all around the venue. It becomes almost like a watching experience when you're at the live event. And watching, as we just discussed, is also changing in its format. And then finally, you have the playing component. Whether it's youth sports, amateur sports, the weekend warriors, you're all creating YouTube content. You're all promoting your own highlights from your GoPro cameras. You're all putting that information out on the internet, and other fans can react to it, cut it up, make it into highlights. And we're building entire communities around new media that's being formed around high school sports, amateur sports, all kinds of youth sports. And that is changing the way that we play too. We think about creating media while we're at our games and our children's games and our friends' games. This conversion is changing the business model of how media is monetized on the internet, but also on air. And we take a very hard look at how fluid fans sit in the intersection of these macro trends of go, watch, and play. And I'm going to walk you through how you can think about this in terms of producing content, in terms of hiring staff, in terms of finding the right partners to work with. Because if you keep this concept in mind, the convergence of go, watch, and play, and the fact that fluid fans move between these modes, then what you're going to do is critical to the future of watching sports. You're going to stop thinking about audiences and fans through the lens of demographics, 18 to 25-year-old males, 25 to 35-year-old females, city dwellers, urban dwellers versus rural. You're not going to use those same demographic frames of reference to actually build your products and build your media. You're going to start looking at it through the lens of behaviors. And these are some of the behaviors I want to walk you through, because this is how we advise our clients to work on producing media that addresses the needs of fluid fans. We start with the idea that athletes themselves are the new distribution channel, that you are breaking down the barriers now through Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, the things that used to prevent athletes from speaking directly to the fans are going away. The direct to consumer platforms now allow fans to create that relationship directly with their consumers, and they become the new media distribution channel. This will ultimately change the power structure in the industry, and they will understand what fan behaviors respond to what content almost faster than the broadcasters will. So thinking about athletes as actually disrupting the entire business model of sports is a really powerful concept, especially when you think about what I just said, which is that the fluid fans sit in the intersection of go, watch, and play. Keep that in your mind as I walk through the rest of this presentation, and we think about not only how athletes are distributing media, but how the media itself is changing. One thing we saw in COVID was that the actual linear broadcast was turned off. There was no live sports. So what did the broadcasters do? What did the properties do in response to that? They actually created derivative forms of media, right? They had virtual sports, which were almost like games that were simulated. They had simulations that weren't exactly virtual sports because there were human actors involved with real sports, that they didn't look like a fake horse race. They were real horse races, maybe real horse statistics. There were all these different ways that the industry tried to create game-like experiences, from archive media, live stats, simulations, gaming consoles. All of that came together to create all kinds of new versions of a live sport, a live sporting event. And this was all in response to COVID. And we saw this happen at the same time that we saw athletes fill the void as well with creating content and going direct to consumers. So training, nutrition content, all of that was happening at the same time that these new formats were being created. Both of these forced us as market researchers and as data collectors to think about what was really happening. And we kept coming back to the idea that there are new fan behaviors that are emerging. And the first one is the idea that fans are using data now. They're using linear broadcasts and media and video to learn more about a sport. So when you're producing media, think about the fan behavior of learn. Am I trying to create a new fan, somebody who's never watched my sport before? Or am I trying to get my existing fans to dive deeper into the action by trying to learn more about what's going on the pitch or on the racetrack? That's a very interesting opportunity to use new stats, use wearables, use new camera angles to unlock things that fans didn't know existed before. Focus on learn and how data and camera angles allow you to create new learning experiences for the fan. Focus on two other behaviors: access and own. These are really, really important when you come to the fact that we're going to make money in new ways from our media. It's not just going to be displaying an advertisement, it's going to be using the media itself to prompt the fan to do two or three things. One is access talent. Now there are platforms that allow athletes to sell access to themselves after the game, in a post-game conference, or on the weekends, or in a training session, and you can bid on having that athlete do a one-to-one virtual communication with you. And those are now being sold as access products in the industry. The other, and there's a graphic of this on this slide, is the fact that we're getting new digital collectibles. This is NBA Top Shot. The idea that you could actually own a piece of a highlight that has a unique ID, is guaranteed by blockchain to be authentic, and all these different things that are now making their way into digital collectibles. That's another way that our media drives new revenue streams into the fan experience. So think about access and own as new opportunities to surround media, to surround video and live entertainment with new products and services that can monetize that video in new ways. Think about participation. If you go back to the beginning of this talk, we were talking about how the industry has for years just talked about the escape of watching sports, leaning back on the couch or at the bar or with your friends and just sitting there and watching the game and talking. Now there's the opportunity to participate, to actually move into the media, to control things that are on the screen. For years now, we've seen the idea that fans can dictate the action on certain new leagues. They can tell the coach to put a certain player in, or they can call the plays, or they have special opportunities to weigh in on what's going to happen next in the game or the event or the venue. All of this ability to participate is driven by the concept of the gaming engines, the ability for the next generation to know that they can actually control live action with their handheld, with their controller. It's called a controller for a reason, because they feel like they can participate in the action that's live and on screen. We believe more and more of that is going to happen as more and more streams and live events are produced using game engines and virtual worlds. These fans can now participate. They can create highlights. They can create clips. They can share them in the marketplace. They can bid on skins, and they can enhance their own virtual identity. That's all participation in the media experience. It's much less passive. And one of the things that I'm sure many of you have been paying attention to as well is the concept of co-watching. We've seen a tremendous acceleration of this technology and opportunity in the media world. And the reason we've seen that is because of COVID and the inability for fans to get together and watch things live in person. So what have we done? We've taken what we know how to do on gaming consoles and competitive streaming platforms like Twitch, and we've put video chat in a live stream environment. And now we've been able to do that and synchronize that in a way that allows multiple video chats to occur with multiple live streams. Verizon just showcased how this was happening at the Super Bowl with 5G by allowing fans to have up to 5 different or 6 different streams concurrently on their handheld device using 5G. That is the flex. That is the opportunity to say networking is coming, this software is coming, OTT audiences are getting big enough where this ability to invite a mate, a friend, a family member to a viewing experience and have them just log on and be there with you for the live event is absolutely coming. This is a huge focus for us as a company to keep track of how companies like Scenic, LiveLike, Promethean, and others are really starting to change the way that we look at live streaming through a digital device or window. And then finally, I wanted to add to that concept the ability for you to think about what it means to attend a live event. Roblox, Fortnite, a number of these large multiplayer game systems have already run live concerts. We're thinking about how the ability to show up at a venue brings together both the live audience that's at the stadium or the arena with a digital audience. And producing media that considers that those two audiences aren't separate, but may communicate with one another, may participate in simultaneous events that occur either at home or at the venue on a large screen, that you could have gaming that is mobile, that unifies both of those audiences so that they can compete against each other or to do other types of things around marketing activations or sponsorship. That's a really important concept when we think about producing media and the skills you need to synchronize a live event that happens at a venue with tens of thousands of fans and an audience at home that's fragmented and disparate, but is also tuning in at the exact same moment. That is something we haven't had the opportunity to think about, but really does open up an enormous opportunity to bring very distinct audiences together around similar experiences. So we challenge our clients to think about how you think about showing up to a virtual venue at the same time fans are showing up at a physical one. And I want to end on some important points that bring the next generation of fans into focus. The pandemic itself, when we think about media, has really taken on a different role in young people's lives. We've gone from a place where they spent time outside playing sports to a point where they are finding much more socialization and much more comfort and community in the online world. So this shows you the dramatic decrease in the number of hours per week that U.S. Students 6 to 18 are spending playing sports. And that immediately gets us thinking about, well, then where are they discovering content? Where are they engaging with each other? And this point is very, very important. This is the way the industry has protected its content to date, but it runs totally contrary to the way that young people find what they're looking for. This is YouTube. And this is statistics that show that the young people out there today are finding and discovering videos of the content and the entertainment they like on YouTube. And professional sports has been reluctant to put their content, which is rights protected or monetized in other formats, on YouTube for discovery. So what you have happening is a lot of kids spending more time online and a lot of kids discovering more of their content through YouTube and social video platforms. So we're running this really interesting problem, which is they're not where we need them to be, which is active and participating in sports and following their heroes, and they're more and more likely to be online and discovering other types of content than professional sport content that helps us build our industry and our fandom. And I think that's really where I want to end, which is focusing on not only does the youth need to get back active, back focused on sport and discovering content on YouTube that is going to drive them to watching live games and following the athletes that they love. But this entire industry needs to optimize itself for the platforms that these young fans are on. They need to make themselves a lot more mobile ready, a lot more accessible, and certainly a lot more social. One of the things that COVID has allowed young people to do who have digital access, and that's a big issue, is if they have digital access, they're using the gaming platforms and a lot of the digital platforms as a socialization layer. It's how they're talking to their friends, it's how they're staying connected. So when sports doesn't fill that role, we need to make sure we're reaching them where they are. And these are the platforms that dominate the young fans' consumption. And what I'll do is I'll leave you with this one piece of advice, which is how we help our clients prepare for this. We understand that the future of watching sports is much more digital, much more engaging, much more participatory. And that's a challenge for a lot of traditional sports organizations that don't have skills in-house to develop that new type of content. In fact, when we talk to a lot of our clients, what we find is that they have very strong traditional broadcast and media production skills. They have very strong live event and entertainment skills, what music to play, what signage to deliver, how to get the crowd amped up. And they also have a very good standalone social team that understands how to get people to like things, share things, engage with social content, keep the conversation going. What we're really trying to help our clients to do is to understand that those are not three separate types of media. In fact, they all play off each other. And in fact, when you bring them together, they create very powerful derivative content, new forms of content, content that can be delivered to fluid fans in any type of context or any type of behavior. We recommend and we help our clients think through how they build what we call a fluid fan studio. And the fluid fan studio sits at the intersection of these traditional media formats and these traditional media groups. The best clients we have understand this, hire from outside of sport to bring in production capabilities, media expertise, design focused thinkers to really start to bring together these skill sets and this level of expertise to build the future of media for our industry, to give fluid fans something they can lean into and not be so passive and leaning back on. This is a key point because a lot of what we're talking about can get distilled down into buzzwords and technology, blah, blah, blah. But the real change that we're looking at as an industry is an organizational change. It's a skill change. It's a development change, which is how do we make our teams and our people and our expertise mirror the demands of the current market? And we believe a fluid fan studio is one of those key components to getting ready for the age of the fluid fan. So with that, I will be back to answer your questions, and I look forward to getting them. But I wanted to thank you again for having me visit the Sportlab. And if you have any questions, you can always find us at sportsilab.com. And I'm happy to answer your questions at that time. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Josh. Good to have you
Hi,
here.
guys.
How are
Hi,
you?
Josh.
Thank you
Wow,
very
look at
much.
your fancy stage.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, right?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Congratulations on the report. A must read, a very, very good deep dive. And everyone who wants to be in the industry in the next years must read it. And thank you very much for that. I have a question for you. Considering your experience with clients in different parts of the world, what is the industry player that is pushing the most these changes in sports consumption? Is it the media, federations, other governing bodies, the fan, sponsors? What would you share with us that would be the biggest player in this movement?
Thank you for that question, and thank you guys again for having me. I think that the fans are the ones that are pushing the industry to think differently. That was the nature of the entire presentation, which is the fans are starting to expect that the technology they use outside of sports is going to really require that the industry responds to them in sport. I think when you look at the media companies, they are pressing very hard to create a new experience online. And you can see this largely from the investment with the large broadcasters and media companies in the United States. And that's the market where we see most of this investment happening quickly. You see huge battles between Paramount, CBS. You just saw the Super Bowl where they were promoting their new OTT channel. You have Disney Plus with their new OTT channel. You have YouTube. You have Fubo, you have Roku, you have all these media companies, and the only way that they're going to win market share, I think, is if they're the ones who really lead the industry forward in creating these new broadcast experiences. And the brands will reward them with their advertising dollars and, a little bit more interest in their platforms.
Thank you, Josh. Hi. Your presentation was really, really interesting. A lot of very valuable insights and actionable insights. So thank you. Josh, I have two questions here. I read the first one. Josh, in the Fluid Fan Studio approach, I consider the co-development of new sponsorships categories a very important part. Can you talk more about it and give us recent practical examples that unite properties, brands, and media partners to discover new sponsorship opportunities?
Yeah, no, I think that co-development is a new concept for the industry, but not one that's very foreign to the way that the industry is used to working. So in a traditional sponsorship, you would have a brand and a property work together to create an activation. It would be a huge event. The trucks would show up, street teams would show up, and you'd have this big, amazing event. But then everything gets packed up and goes away. Co-development is about the opportunity to create platforms that live longer and sort of have a longevity to them that allow you to create communities, digital communities. And if you can create a digital platform that brings together those fans, you can activate them again and again after the game is over. So we look at things like NBA's Top Shot with Dapper Labs and with a number of different athletes out there as a way to create a new type of platform. We look at what Google has done with Major League Baseball to create a film room where you can go online and create highlights, and you can build an audience and a community around that. We look at what Barcelona has done by creating their own in-house media studio, so they can bring in their brand partners and they can create specific content outside of the game and live event. We are looking at how those types of assets and technology partners come together to co-develop platforms that build audiences that live beyond game day. And I hope that's enough specific examples of where we see this happening. We just finished our report on the top 25 most innovative properties in the world. And if you look at those top 10, a number of them really have already started to build their in-house production skills so that they're creating their own media and they're able to bring their partners in and co-develop solutions together.
Thank you. I think it's a very important message for us here in Brazil, this concept of continuous platform and this co-creation of activations and sponsorship programs. So I think this is very valuable for us here in Brazil.
Josh,
I think everywhere, I think everywhere in the world, because they spend they spend so much money on these big activations. Why not have them develop an asset that can, exist afterwards? So it's a very important point, Luis.
Good.
Great. Now I have two questions from our audience that I will try to pack in one. First from Andre Stein. He's asking if the pandemic already brought us any track record of changes in sports consumption, if you guys already have any info about that. And the second one from Laura Reis, which is a much more tactical one. She's asking about your opinion about VR from home to the stadium. What's your opinion about this innovation being spread worldwide in the stadium during the events?
Okay, so let's take the first one. And I think I understand the question. It's about how has media consumption changed because of the pandemic? Okay. So I don't have viewership numbers, but I do have technology innovation research. And the thing that I touched on in my presentation, I think is the most relevant change in live entertainment consumption, which is this concept of co-watching. We're all very used to doing Zoom and video conferencing now with multiple people. We are very clear that that is going to continue as a viewership model to bring more and more people into a live streaming event. I would say that the co-watching thing is very, very important in the change in consumption patterns because of the pandemic. And I would also point to the live concerts that we saw and we continue to see coming from the gaming companies, the EA Sports and the Epic Games and others that are creating those large entertainment and music events online with millions and millions of people simultaneously logging in. On the virtual reality thing, I'm a little bit less bullish, just because of the technology costs and the digital divide. There's a very important thing in the technology world called the hype cycle, and Gartner Research gets credit for coining that term, which is that everybody gets really, really, really excited about something, and that's when it's at the peak of its hype cycle. And then it goes way down because everybody's like, wow, that didn't work. And that's when you sort of like get into this delusion, like, you're not really excited about the technology anymore. And then it comes back. And as it comes back, it hits this productivity thing, which is when it actually has some utility, some usefulness. I think we're almost coming back with virtual reality, where the cost has gone down enough. We're done with the magic leap sort of models where everybody's going to pour millions and millions of dollars in to create these studios. And I think we're coming back to a point where there's going to be some sort of less of a heads up display experience that allows the cost structure to work, where we're going to have more virtual reality in 2 or 3 years.
Sounds perfect. Josh, thank you very much. We have some more questions that we are going to send you. If you don't mind, in your time, please answer us that we can send to our fan base, to our audience. Thank you very much for being with us today. Once again, showing your experience, your talent, and your content. Wish you a very good week, and please be with us next month in our next webinar. Thank you very much.
You guys are very kind to have me. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
See you, Luis. Bye, Rafael.
Bye, bye. Bom, gente, então a gente chegou ao final do nosso segundo webinar. Acho que foi um conteúdo muito rico sobre um assunto muito importante. Então, queria agradecer aqui a presença de todos vocês, agradecer aqui ao meu parceiro, amigo Rafael Plastina, tá? E só reforçar que a gente vai ter no dia 3 de março, no mês que vem, o nosso terceiro webinar falando sobre Data Driven Sponsorship, tá? A gestão de patrocínios ancorada em dados. Tá? Então, mais uma vez, obrigado e nos vemos no próximo.
Uma última mensagem. Fiquem atentos às nossas redes sociais, que a gente agorinha vai gravar um novo conteúdo falando sobre inovação e tecnologia aplicada ao desenvolvimento da indústria do esporte no Brasil e no mundo. Um conteúdo rico, cheio de cases, cheio de dicas, que a gente vai gravar agora com um jovem talento da indústria, Felipe Ribe. Grande abraço e obrigado pela paciência e o carinho de vocês nessa tarde de hoje.